Now we are going to finally start drawing. So mainly we are going to use four tools. The first one is the pen. I use the marker, Milli pen, and the brush size will depend on your drawing, but I mainly use the 5. Also, we are going to use the eraser, the hard one, and the brush size will depend on whether you are using a drawing tablet or a mouse, because in the drawing tablet it will depend on how much pressure you apply on it. So for example, I'm going to draw a line on 30 so you can see, then I go to eraser, and this is in a drawing tablet. If I apply a little bit of pressure, as you can see, it barely makes any difference. It barely sees. This is barely touching it. But if I put all the pressure, then it will make a big line. And if I vary the pressure, it will change the brush size. But if you use the mouse, it will always be the 20 that I am using here. Okay, so remember that. Also, we are going to use the figure layer to make the rules and the correct line tool. Okay, so now I erase this. Okay, it is there. So, the first thing to do, I believe, is to plan ahead on how your drawing is going to be, where the each individual drawing is going to be on your sheet of paper, to consider the sizes of the drawings and the general layout. So now we are going to go to File, then Import, and then File, and we select every photograph or drawing that you want to use as reference. These will be our reference layers. Why do we need to do this on with the import utility? Well, that's because if you just copy and paste it, there will be a difference. I will show you. So now I am going to open, I copy and paste it, and now will put them together. And so what's the difference? They look very like the same. Okay, I will show you, but first I am going to teach you that when you need to change the size of your photograph in this example, or your drawing, you go to this tool that is called Scale and Rotate, and remember to enable the Keep Aspect Ratio. Because if you don't, if isn't enabled, then you will deform your picture, your photograph, your drawing when you move it, when you pull. But if you enable it, of course it will maintain and it will not deform. So you may be wondering that I am doing the same things with both of them. Maybe I'm not using the scale rotate because it is different with the import layer. But when you start drawing, obviously you want to do it on a different layer, on your, for example, on your draft layer, that in this case is called Boceto Sporofito. So I am going to begin drawing. Of course, this is an example. This is in the size that you are supposed to do it. But there are times that you are so focused on your process that you don't realize that you are not drawing on your draft layer, that you are drawing, actually you are drawing on the reference layer. And then you start drawing and you make everything like okay, because this is only the draft, so it doesn't even matter, this is just an example. So you think you are ready and you are going to start drawing and you want to hide the reference layer and just keep the draft, and when you hide it you realize that you don't have any draft because it is on the reference layer, and it is very awful. But if you do it on the ink layer, it will be 10 times worse. But what happens with the import layer? As you can see, it doesn't allow me to do anything related to drawing. I can change the size, of course, but I can't draw at all. That's why I think that import is a better utility than to just copy and paste. So now I'm going to change the sizes of the photograph so I can put the general layout. Also with the import, you don't have to click on the scale rotate and press OK. It will change automatically. And we put every photograph where we are going to need it. Okay, so there it is. And I think that now we are ready. So the next thing to do is to create a folder for each of the photographs that they will be, and obviously each of the drawings. So for example, this is Células Profito, and I am going to move it inside the folder. To do that, I have to maintain the click, and when a square appears, then I dropped it. If a red line appears, then it is going to move it. If I want it inside, I have to check that it is a square. Now with the next folder, Involucro, also I keep the click, and when the square appears, I drop it. Now the next one, Gametofito. And the last one, that is Sporofito. And remember the square, and there it is. I am going to use this layer that I already created. And there it is. And now we are ready. Now that all the photographs that we are going to use are in their place, we are going to start drawing. I don't know if you have ever seen or used an attachment to the microscope that projects an image next to the microscope in a sheet of paper that reflects what you are seeing on the microscope. It blew my mind when I see it the first time. So what we are going to do is somewhat similar to that. So what I recommend you to do is that each of the pictures has its own individual draft layer, its own individual ink layers, and its own individual detail layers, and also their individual ruler layer. Why? Because if you have to move the drawings to a different place, you will just have to move the entire folder and not move each individual layer. It will be very easy to do that with each individual folder instead of doing it if you have all your drafts on a single layer or all your inks on a single layer. Now remember that every layer that we are going to use to draw have to be on top of your photograph, your reference layer. Okay, now we are ready. So Before we start, I want you to know that I am using a drawing tablet that is from the brand called Wacom, and its name is One by Wacom. It is Wacom's most simple drawing tablet because it doesn't have buttons at all. It's just a drawing tablet and your pen. It is not to be confused with the Wacom One because that is, I believe, it is the most advanced and the most beautiful of the brand of Wacom. It has its own screen, a lot of tools, etc. So I don't know why Wacom decided to name both of them like that, because one is the simplest one and the other is their best. But that's the way it is. So remember, it is one by Wacom. And I believe that for what we are going to do, it will be enough. It is a very, very good product, and you will see what we are going to achieve with it. Also, I'm going to do a little bit of mouse drawing, so you can see what we can achieve with it. I believe that it is best to start with a draft to check how the drawing is going. Especially, it is very useful if you are not the person that is the expert on the subject, like it is my case with Antoceros. So, what I did was I first make a draft and then show it to the author of the paper, and she told me that I make a little bit of mistakes in the shape of the cells or the thickness of the walls. So that way, I first make the draft, then show it to her, and she can make me some annotations, tell me where I'm wrong or if it is okay, and then I make all the erase all the mistakes on the draft layer, may do what she told me to do, show it to her again, and then she told me if it was okay, and then when I was given the final okay, then I started making the inks. So in this case, what I believe I have to do is to follow the cell walls. And remember, this is the draft, so I'm not going to put a lot of care. This is a draft and an example, so it will be not that careful as I would do it if this was a drawing for a paper. Also, this is very useful if you use different pictures for the same drawing. So we have different planes and we don't have a program that collapses all the photographs in on a single one, then we can achieve it with the drawing. So for example, if that was the case, I will have to import all the different planes, and I first start to draw on one that it is very clear, and draw everything that it is clear on that, and then I change to another plane and keep drawing so I can have a better version. Okay, so I make a mistake here because I started to draw on a draft that is not the one that corresponds to this picture. So The thing to do is I just changed its name and move it to the different folder. That's why the draft and also the individual layer is important, because that way I just change the draft to a different layer. If I had it on a single layer all the drafts, then I will have to move with the lasso tool, and that is time consuming and it is not useful. So that way I made a mistake, but I can correct it very fast. So we will keep drawing. It don't have to be perfect. So for example, in this plane, I can see it very well, but if I have a different picture that plane is better picture, then I will be able to do the drawing a little best. So for example, I don't know if this structure is in the same is on top, but I will draw it like that. But if, for example, the person that is the expert says to me that, no, why are you doing this? This is not on top. This is inside the structure. Then I will have to go to eraser and erase that part. Okay, and to give it that effect, then I will have to make this correction. That dotted line shows to other people that this is inside. So of course you can do it like that. Remember that it is just a draft, so it doesn't matter how much how separated the dots are. So now the program will save the drawing for me, because as you remember that I said on the first video, if you don't enable this, and for and if anything happened to the lights or something like that, I will lose everything I had done. So now imagine that I have the drawing already done, and I'm going to show it to the person that is going to tell me if it is okay. So obviously I will do the inks next. So first I create my vector layer, and to make a difference between the both of them, I go to this part, set as draft layer, then I click on this square, so that way it will change all my drawing to a different color, and I can change the opacity so I can see more clearly what I'm going to ink. And now I will start to ink. So depending on whether you are confident on your drawing abilities, or if you are just beginning, you can make the drawing in two ways. For example, if you are not as much confident with your drawings abilities with a tablet, you can make your lines a little bit careless. I'm going to show you a technique that I used with my first drawings, but since then I have stopped using it, because now I have a little more of ability. So, for example, if you made your lines very careless, you can go to simplify vector line, and then just start moving your control points to achieve your line. Of course, you want to do this very well with a lot of care, but considering that you can use the vector tools, you can be a little less careful. Okay, so we are going to leave it like this, and as I told you, you can do this, simplify all your vector lines, and then with the control points, then start adjusting your line to your photograph. This is in the case that you are not very confident with the drawing tablet, I insist. If possible, don't do this, because yes, you will have more control with the vector lines. It will take you a little bit of time to add control points, move them, etc. Draw if your drawing is well done from the beginning, then you will not depend as much on the control points as for example what we are doing here. This is just an example, and mainly to for beginners. You can face problems like this where you don't know where your control points are, so you move them along and delete what it is not needed. Okay. Over here. This is taking a little bit more time than I was expecting, but already there. So we can keep going. Switch corner, move it. It may seem inconvenient to do your drawing with control points, but it is not as awful as it seems. It is very fast, actually. But if you do it well from the beginning, then you won't waste so much time with this. Even if you draw very well, the vector line will help you a lot on making little corrections. So I believe that it is better, whether you are an expert on drawing on tablet, it is very useful to use your vector line to make your inks. in this case, I'm going to draw without using as much of the vector line utility. I'm going to draw like I draw now. So as you can see, one of the lines, the last line I draw, seems a little more hand-drawn, and the others look different. So if you want to change that, you go to simplify vector tool, and then you can change how much the program will simplify your line if you don't want to remove as much control points as I was doing. But it will depend on you, how you feel more comfortable. Also, if you are having a hard time making long strokes, you can move your stabilization to what you need. The higher the value you establish on the stabilization, the more the program will adjust the line for you. So for beginners, maybe it is a good recommendation to start with a high stabilization point and then lower it as you get better with the tablet. I believe that it is better to set the stabilization low so the drawing looks more natural, but it's as you wish, what you feel comfortable with. But of course, if you don't want to buy or you can't buy at the moment your drawing tablet, then we will make the drawing with the mouse, and that is only available if you are using your vector layer. So for example, I'm going to start drawing with the mouse, and this will be awful. And for example, if you have to consider that when you draw with the mouse, the brush size will be very important. In the case of the millipen, for example, if I draw with a tablet, the pressure I input on the tablet won't make as much a difference as it did with the eraser, or as it can be done with different tools. For example, this is the brush size 3, and this is a very lightly pressure, and this is full pressure, and as you can see, it doesn't make as much as a difference. But with the mouse, but if I use, for example, the G pen, this is this is a little bit of pressure, and then this is all the pressure, and you can see it is a big difference. And with the mouse, it is always the same. It is always the most pressure. So for example, if you want to keep if I want to keep doing this drawing with the mouse, then I will have to adjust the size of the brush to maintain it the way it was. So for example, 3 looks bigger with the mouse than what I did with the drawing tablet. So I adjust it to 2 0.5, and I believe it is the same size. So okay, so then I will have to use this brush size to do it with the mouse. Now, so now I am going to make a little cheat, if you want to call it that. I am going to draw. Well, I'm not going to draw. I'm just making a line. Then I go to simplify and move it so it can connect with the other. Then I add points. This also you will gain experience on how to do it. You will certainly at first struggle with how much control points you need, but it will get easier over time. So now I adjust the control points, and remember that the further away the control points are between each other, the more they will affect the line. The closer they are, the less they will affect the general line. So of course you can do this with mouse, as you can see, but of course it will be more difficult. If you want to make to zoom in or zoom out with the mouse, you just have to use your wheel, but my mouse is dying, so I can't do it. So if you don't have a drawing tablet, if you are using mouse, I think it is better to do everything, your draft and your inks, with a vector layer. So now let's say that our drawing is already done. Of course, it looks a little bit ugly, but this is just an example, and this will be. I think I will discard it for the next video, so you can see a better drawing. But consider that this is done. Now we are going to do the ruler. So I will create a vector layer. I will put the regla gametofito or the gametofito ruler, and I go to the figure tool. I set it in a straight line. So as you can see, it will anchor itself when I begin the line. And I can move it all over the place without a set angle. If I want it in a set angle, then I press Ctrl Shift, because if I just press Ctrl, it won't make any difference, but if I press Shift also, alone, it will anchor itself, and then when I press Shift, it will move on a set angle. I believe it's from 15 to 15. So for example, I will set the line here, press Shift and move it so it can remain at 0 degrees. I will lower the opacity so we can see better, and there it is. Remember, Shift, also if the ruler is not where you want it to be, you can just move layer, and it's already done. And now we can move it to wherever I need it, in case that in this place is not as useful. I do this way because if I put it on the layer, on the ink layer, then I will have to select the ruler only with the lasso tool, and it is very inconvenient to do. It is better to have it on a different layer on its own. That way I can move it to wherever I need it. I will, just in case, I will show you the lasso tool on the inks, so you can see how annoying it is to move just a line. So I select it, I move it, and I then press select, and now I can modify the line. But it is it is cumbersome to do this way, so that's why I prefer the ruler to be on a different layer. Also remember that you can, if you want to erase a line in your vector layer, you just have to go to eraser vector, select the erase whole line, and it is already done. So for example, when I in these parts that I have lines that are not in the intersection, instead of moving them and make connect them, I can just go to eraser, to the vector eraser, and now it's done where the intersections were. So of course with the vector layer I can make a lot of changes that I wouldn't be able to do in the raster layer. God damn it. Also remember that if your lines are far from each other, you will have to get them closer. So finally, I will insist that if you are using a mouse, consider drawing everything on vector layers. So we will finish this video now and then move to the detail layers and a different bit of techniques for the details in the next video. See you later.